Good day, everyone. Let's look at this specific lecture that will cover contract instructions. As we've said before, that contract instructions forms the basis of a final account. Your principal agent, being it the architect, will start issuing contract instructions, contract instruction number 1 to contract instruction number X from the start of the project. So there will be various contract instructions on a specific project. As quantity surveyor, you need to just follow the JBCC principal agreement in relation to the contract instructions clause, and also know what to do when those instructions is issued. Now, if we look at this specific exercise or example 1, you'll note that there is contract instruction number 1 right up till contract instruction number 9 in this case, which is the omission of contingencies. Right, so we've got 9 contract instructions to work through. So let's look at contract instruction number 1. And remember, the principle of contract instructions is that you need to omit what you've measured and you add the new. Some instructions, there will only be omissions. Some instructions, there will be only additions. If we look at this specific contract instruction number 1, it states to add a network cord, right? The whole spec is given there in your instruction, so there will be only additions. So I'm not going to discuss and bug you with the actual quantities. I'm just going to highlight some principles. We've also learned, if you look at the very first description here, it's not a fully detailed description. In the bill will have the full detailed description. We all know by now, we will refer to the bill, and in this case, we use the as item 3 on page 20. So it's just a very concise description. It is still in the order of the bill, the quantity, the unit rather, quantity, the rate, and then the amount. So you're going to measure the actual additions on this specific contract instruction. So all these quantities will then be determined by your measurement. And also, if you look at the additions, all the items is also put into the trade order. You're not going to just randomly mix it. It is going to be in the trade order. So in this case, all 3 items which is now add on, you'll see that we've used the as reference. So it means there is actually a measured item in the bill, so we use the bill rates. We will have an illustration later on where we have to compile a new bill rate because we haven't got that item measured in the bill. So in this case, that specific contract instruction number 1 brings me to an extra of 131,900. Okay, you'll see later on when we're going to discuss the complete final account, you'll see this reference here. It's stated here, total carried to summary, and that summary we will discuss. That's almost your summary page of the final account. So your final account will start with contract instruction number 1. And as I said, there's a range of various contract instructions. If you look at the JBCC clause, there is almost a variable of 20 different variables where we could issue a contract instruction. If we move on to contract instruction number 2, in this case, the architect principal agent issued an instruction, omit the vinyl tiles in kitchens and toilet and add ceramic tiles in lieu of. Now that's another new terminology that we use, and that in lieu of is just in place of. So we're going to omit the vinyl tiles that we've measured. So in the bill, you go to that specific kitchen and the toilet areas where it's affected. You've measured 75 square meters. In the bill, remember the bill could be 500 square meters, but you're only going to omit now 75 square meters. it's item number 6 on page 157, and then that's the bill rate. You're going to add the ceramic tiles, and again, there is ceramic tiles measured on the project, item number 9 on page 157. The area is the same, and in the ceramic tiles rate in the bill is 200 millimeters. Remember, if you have a reference as, you're not allowed to change the bill rates. The bill rates must be the same. You're not allowed to change. And always the approach will always be to omit first and then add. And in this case, you can see there's going to be a significant extra on the project. Almost we omit 8,250 and we add 15,000 for the ceramic tiles. And that total is again carried over to the final summary page of the final account. Contract instruction number 3, it's another add-on, joinery fittings as item 5,140, 4,000 is added to the contract. Contract instruction number 4, omit half brick wall, and a little bit of specification given there. The wall is plastered and painted both sides. So 4 times 3, that gives me my 12. You've got both sides plaster and paint, both sides, and then use the bill rate. So in this specific item, it's an omission, and all 3 items here, we do have items measured in the bill related to the omission. So therefore, we use the reference there as the bill item reference and then the page reference. So it's another 4,080 Rand extra, or a omission to the contract. If we look at the next item, which is a contract instruction that said we must install a roller shutter door in the position where indicated. Now imagine yourself in this case, we've already measured the wall with finishes both sides, and now the architect said, well, form an opening and install a roller shutter door. So we need to omit what we've measured in the bill, and just make a note to yourself here, because we're going to discuss a later stage if the work has been done already. In this case, no work has been done. So therefore, if no work has been done, then it will be an omission, and it's going to be an add-on. So the work has not been done yet. So there's no wall built, and the finishes aren't in place. So therefore, we can omit what we've measured in the bill, and we're going to omit the 1 brick wall. There was a little bit of face brick, and I think here the extra over, that's up to, let's say, a dado level. There was internal plaster above the face brick, and it was also plastered. There was also a Meranti skirting at the floor level, and also the Meranti skirting was varnished. Can you see the affected items by that instruction? And also the affected items is in trade order, and all of them is as, because we've got the items measured, and therefore I can use the bill rates. And then the addition. Okay, we've now omitted the wall. We've installed the roller shutter door, so there's a little bit of extra over for the face brick, and that is related to the reveals. Also the Meranti skirting, and you can, from this, you can now actually get the picture that this wall is internal wall, because we've got Meranti skirtings both sides. And therefore the Meranti skirting here is to the reveal. There was vinyl floor tiles in the opening that we need to add. There was also the screed onto the vinyl tiles, the square meters, and now look. And also, I'm jumping this item number 4. I will come back to that one. And then the internal plaster in narrow widths onto the ceiling, as well as the paint on the ceilings. Now, if we look at the roller shutter door, which is now a new item, it is not measured in the bill. So when it is a new item, you need to have a fully detailed description. You can also note that there is no reference to the item. I didn't use as, or I couldn't use the other alternative, which is a C. Right, so it's a total new item, so therefore it must be a fully detailed description. Because of that, we need to ask the contractor to supply us with a new rate. So the contractor needs to supply you with that new rate build-up, and this new rate build-up is almost going to be an addendum and annexure that is part of the final account. So at the back of your final account, you'll have a list of all the annexures, and in this case, that will be your first annexure, is to indicate to the client, how did we get to that new rate? So again, your principle of building economics applies, how to build up a rate, in other words, material, labor, plant, overheads, and profits, to get to a realistic rate. So when the contractor supplies you with a rate for that specific new item, you're going to check that, see if it's realistic. If yes, and in this case, the contractor priced the new roller shutter door to the value of 16,847 odd rand, and that is the supply and fit. So it's a new item, so therefore we need to build up a new rate and supply evidence. How did we get to that new rate? Good. So in this case, the additions add up to 17,300. So if we look at this instruction, and I would like you to just visualize in this case, we do have an existing wall measured in the bill with the finishes both sides, and now the architect said we need to install a door. So you need to omit, create that opening. You omit what you've measured, the effected work, and then add the new work relative to that specific opening, including the new roller shutter door. Excellent. So let's move on to the next item, which is the remeasurement of foundations. And that is always going to be an item that you're going to cater for in the final account. That you've measured the element foundations provisional, so therefore all provisional work must be remeasured. In other words, you have to go on site and you're going to omit what you've measured and you add the new quantities. Now, if we look at this approach, it is acceptable for certain clients. I'm going to, first of all, omit all the various items that I've measured under foundations. Now, if you look at, we've got items measured under the trade excavations. There was items measured under concrete, the trade concrete, masonry or brickwork trade, and the waterproofing. So I've got 4 trades here. If we look at the first omission here, it's almost a compilation of various items under earthworks or excavations as item 7 of page 45 to item 4 on page 46. So it's a range of items to the value of 37,896 rand. That is acceptable, but you need to liaise with the client. Some clients, specifically public works, for instance, it's not going to accept the omissions in this format. They want the individual items. So you're going to list all the items as in the bill for this specific item. So you can do it. You can actually compile them together, or you should actually have various items. The same applies for the concrete. You can group them together, or the individual items must be listed. But at the end, even if we summarize it like this, my all versus the individual items, my total omission must be the same. Can't be a different total. So I'm going to omit the foundations as measured in the bill of quantities to the value of 223,593 rand. Then I'm going to add the remeasured quantities. And then I'm going to start here. Here you can see that I can't group them together. It's now individual items. So I have to go to the site, and obviously with the contractor's representative, and remeasure the excavations as item 7, page 45. So my new total that I've measured is 189 times it by the bill rate. Remember, the bill rates are the same. We can't change that. The only variable here is your quantities, because we've measured the trade foundations, or the element foundations, as provisional. So that's the only variable. It can be less or more than what is measured in the bill. So I've captured all my due quantities against each item. If we just look at this specific item, if you go to your bill, it might be that the contractor said, well, there's no real difference in the quantity of your excavations for trenches. Therefore, I'm going to keep my excavations free from water the same. So this specific, I've highlighted this one. It's exactly the same as in the bill. So there was no change. If you go to your excavation items, you'll find that item 12, page 45, which is included in that total, the total was also 500. So I've omitted 500 from the excavations, and I've added the same amount because I've decided that the quantity was relatively the same as measured in the bill. If it was a very substantial difference, then I would proportionally change the addition, the add-on for the keep excavation free from water. But you'll also find that this is a very minimal cost. So it's not a real cost factor. So all the items, the balance of the items is now remeasured items and also in trade order. And then my total is 214. So you can see here a little bit of a saving. I've omitted in the bill to 23,000 odd, and I've added 214 odd rand. So 1,000. That it's a little bit of a saving on the foundations. If we move on to the next contract instruction, which is the adjustment for provisional sum. So all nominated work will be adjusted. So I've got in the bill of quantities, this specific one, we've got electrical work to the value of 400,000 rand. There was attendance price and as well as profit. So I'm going to omit the nominated subcontract work. If there was, let's say, air conditioning, I'm going to repeat myself, air conditioning, as well attendance and profit on the air conditioning. And then I'm going to add the new values, and this value is to be supplied by the electrical engineer. I'm going to contact the engineer and ask him what is the final amount for electrical work. Obviously, he's also preparing a final account on the electrical installation, and he will submit me the final total. And remember, this total is excluding VAT. Nowhere in my final account I will include a VAT. I will only add VAT at the end, at the summary page. Obviously, the electrical engineer will give you a total of inclusive of VAT. You need to take out the VAT. This is important. The final account, the value here, is exclusive of VAT. Then the attendance will be a pro rata adjustment. How did we get to this a figure for the add-on for attendance? It is always based on the original versus the actual. Right, so it's a pro rata calculation. It's the original amount, 20,000, divided by 400,000, times it by the final. All right, I'm going to repeat myself. It's the original 20,000 divided by 400, times it by the final will give you that figure of 21,000 odd rand for attendance. The same applies for the profit. It's the original 12,000 divided by 400, times it by the 500. Will give you an amount of 12,700. If the contractor decided in the bill there was a zero amount for profit, a zero amount for attendance in both cases, then that is in the bill of quantities. Then we're not going to pay the contractor any profit and attendance. So whatever is in the bill will be pro rata paid to the contractor. The contractor can't come to you now as a quantity surveyor and said, well, can you include some profit and attendance for me in the final account? You will just go to your bill and you'll note, no, he didn't price attendance, he didn't price profit, so therefore I'm not going to price any, give him any amount for attendance and profit in the final account. Right, there you can see the calculations for the profit and attendance, the pro rata calculation. Then we deal with prime cost items. Now, the definition for prime cost is that you've only allowed almost like a prime cost for materials only, because the specification at the tender stage was not ready. So in this case, we need to omit what I've allowed in the bill, and I'm going to add the actual items that is now priced at the new rate. If we look at the two items that is given here, allow the prime cost item of 125 Rand per lock set as item 1583. Now that 125 is material only. The contractor is going to add on labor and overheads, and that gives him a bill rate of 170. We'll come to that explanation. How did we get to that one? The same for item 2. The prime cost for ceramic tiles was 112 Rand 50. So we need to omit that. 45 square meters for ceramic tiles, and then the final bill cost or rate per square meter was 174. You can see the prime cost, the material cost. So that 112 is actually included in that 175. So the 112 Rand is your material only, and then your final bill rate. If we then go to the add-on, the contractor now goes and he is going to buy a lock set to the value of 103 Rand. Remember, in the bill, we've allowed the prime cost for the material, the lock set of 125. He goes to the supplier, and now he bought that new lock set at 103 Rand 50. So what is then the new bill rate? So if we just go to your calculations, you'll see there was the original allowance in the bill of 125. There was labor allowed, and that gives me now the bill rate of 170 Rand 50. That was under the omissions. There is your 170 Rand. Okay, we need to determine now the new rate based on the new price for the lock set. So we've allowed a cost for the lock set of 125 in the bill. The contractor goes to the supplier, and he actually buy the actual lock set at the rate of 103 Rand. Add the labor, because irrespective of the cost of the lock set, you're still going to have a 30 Rand labor component. That gives me then a cost of 133 Rand 50, and add the profit. The profit is also pro rata, which is now 15 Rand 50, divided by 155, times it by 133. That will give me then a final rate for a lock of 146.85. Okay, there's your new rate, and then times it by 15 locks. That will give you the total. The same for your ceramic tiles. The prime cost, there is the breakdown of my bill rate of 175. All the range of items included, the profit, and that was the total allowed for the ceramic tiles. The contractor goes off to the supplier, and the rate for the tiles per square meter that he bought was 119.50. Waste on the tiles, again, it's pro rata on the original, times it by the new. The labor rate, you'll see the labor rate is actually the same in this case. You can just make a note. the same, the adhesive also the same, and the grouting also the same. And then the profit, it's again the pro rata, original, 1588 divided by 158.88 times it by the new cost here of 166.23. That will give you then the profit. And therefore, my new rate for the ceramic tiles is 182.84. So this portion of work is also going to be a form of addendum annexure in the final account to show the client how did we get to that new rate. Right, that's the prime cost adjustment. So remember the definition for a prime cost. It's only the allowance was made because there was no specification at tender stage, so therefore we must allow something, and that something that we've allowed is for the material only. We still add on additional amounts in the form of labor, etc., to get to the actual bill rate. Good. So let's move on to the last contract instruction here, which is given. The architect or the principal agent did issue a contract instruction to omit contingencies. Now, you have to look at the summary page. So if there's a amount allowed for contingencies, then you need to omit whenever, and the golden rule is whenever there's an amount allowed for contingencies, it must be an omission. If the principal agent is not creating a contract instruction, you should actually create one yourself. There's just a note here that the quantity surveyor must create a contract instruction to omit the contingencies. And you'll normally find that contingencies will always be allowed for private public works, for instance. Private clients is not really in favor of contingencies. So therefore, just make sure whenever there's an amount allowed for contingencies, you'll have to omit it. And obviously with contingencies, when you tender or prepare your bill of quantities, you need to ask the client, the employer, do you want contingency in the bill of quantities, yes or no? So in this case, there was an amount allowed for, so we're going to omit that one. That brings me to the end of this specific example. We will then continue next time when we're going to look at the adjustment of preliminaries and then set up the final account summary. We'll see each other next time.